you geeks! In honor of Halloween, we are diving down into the pits of hell to complain about Milton's Satan.
I done told you once, you son of a bitch, I'm the best as ever been.
As it was explained to me in grade school, because tomorrow is the feast for all the souls in heaven, and the day after that is the feast for all the souls in purgatory, it stands to reason that today is for the souls in hell.
Wrong!
As if they were worth celebrating, but they are worth mocking. All Hallows Eve may have had roots in ancient pagan rituals, but what doesn't? The feast has been christened as the eve of a solemnity, which means Catholic pre-gaming by dressing up as saints. But why let little things like cultural awareness get in the way when trying to ride the YouTube algorithm to the top? So here goes, 10 things I hate about Paradise Lost. It's a good poem. As a work of art, Paradise Lost is a technical masterpiece. Milton's wordsmithing is brilliant. He is able to evoke both the sublime and the monstrous natures of heaven and hell. More importantly, his words evoke strong emotional responses, though maybe not the ones he is expecting.
Hate is a strong word, but I really don't like you.
Paradise Lost is a masterpiece of the English language and is a cultural juggernaut, so I must give credit where it is due. Milton is a good writer. If this poem was poorly written, it would have been lost in time already, and it would not be demanding my attention. As a true work of artistic brilliance, I must consider it. Thus, I resent it for being good. 9. The hypocrisy. This is a rather small critique, because really, who can practice everything they preach? Yet Milton seems to be completely unaware of the irony that is him who preaches sola scriptura, or should I say scripture alone, creating a tradition of English Christianity based solely on his imaginative caprices. Notably, the whole war in heaven from Book 6. Wherein Michael and Satan fight as rivals in a Homeric epic for 3 days. Satan is only driven back when Jesus comes in a chariot and drives Satan and the fallen angels into hell. This epic is a rather loose interpretation of the events relayed in Revelation. And there was a war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, and prevailed not. Neither was their place found any more in heaven. In principle, I have no problem with artistic embellishment of the Bible. But I do take umbrage with self-righteous prigs who do and then say things like this. The truth with superstitions and traditions taint, left only in those written records pure, though not but by the Spirit understood. Milton's lack of self-awareness makes the next point all the more galling to me. 8. People lump it in with the Divine Comedy. Imagine, if you will, an old Catholic gentleman once wrote the perfect trilogy. He based it off of both ancient myth and contemporary science. His work was accessible to all, yet perfectly contained how Catholics view the mystery of life, death, good and evil, and then years later, some hack goes back to write a prequel, which rips the best out of the original and places them in new, ill-fitting context.
This is bad comedy.
It's probably because Gustave Doré did printings of both works, and his works cover up a lot of the distinctions, save one glaring issue. Dante's Satan is a 3-headed, hairy monstrosity who blubbers in eternal misery while frozen up to his armpits in ice.
Wallowing in freakish misery forever.
while Milton's Satan is a physically attractive spirit who likes to brood atop mountains until he's cursed by God to crawl on his belly and is transformed into a giant snake dragon thing, which is not exactly the turnoff I think Milton intended.
You make me so hot, make me wanna drop. You're so ridiculous.
Of course, due to this constant confusion in pop culture, I, the Divine Comedy girl, just had to read this darn poem. 7. It's the grandfather of fantasy and sci-fi. As the cultural juggernaut that it is, it's not surprising that a fair number of contemporary books are based off of Paradise Lost. This isn't exclusively Milton's fault, as I think he might object to the likes of Red Rising or Sanderson's bold claim that Eve is a hero of this poem. Not sure where he would stand on the whole Wheel of Time thing, though he would probably approve of His Dark Materials, the only book I've ever physically yeeted. I would have thrown this book too, but I was listening to it on my phone, so that was not an option. In some ways, it's good that modern fantasy pulls from Paradise Lost, since it means I can attribute whatever I don't like in them as them just being faithful to their artistic inspiration, which gives me more reason to dislike this poem, and like the subsequent works. Milton 6. Milton's God is an a-hole. While I could go on and on about how Milton's concept of the Trinity and time and space within eternity makes no sense even on his own premises, the nature of the triune Godhead is a bit too broad for this video.
So God is split?
Yes. And no.
There is unity in division.
And division in unity.
I'm not sure I follow, Padre.
Young man, you don't follow for a very simple reason. These men are screwballs.
So let's just suppose that Milton wants his reader to like God, find his rays strange but just, and upon reading this poem, spurn Satan and all his works. If that is the point, Milton effed up. As established above, Milton's Satan is at least physically attractive, while God appears to be a remote, ineffective micromanager.
Don't you dare! If you put one fin on that boat, are you listening to me? Don't touch the boat. Nemo!
He touched the butt.
On the one hand, Genesis makes it clear that Adam and Eve had one simple rule, which they immediately broke. Yet Milton's storytelling choices make God and his angels look incompetent.
It's all part of the great plan. It's not for us to understand. It's ineffable.
Sure, there's a lot of talking about respecting humanity's free will, but there's a lot more showing of predestination. And Adam and Eve aren't so much actors in the struggle for humans to remain in paradise, but rather are the pawns of angels, demons, and Milton's Messiah. If that is truly the sort of God Milton believed in, then may God have mercy on his soul. 5. Postmodern rebellion and pandemonium. Given the popularity of Milton's poem, of course, it has a deep impact on his culture, just as his traditions had a deep impact on his poem. Of note, the poem embodies the prevailing modern, meaning 1700s and 1800s, Christian heresy that God is a tyrannical jerk. Thus, when we get to the 1900s and postmodernism, we see culture, rightfully I'd say, reject the tyrannical jerk. But in the logic of this poem, that is satanic rebellion.
I rebel.
Thus, things fall apart. The center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. See, I don't have a personal grudge against all Protestant poets. just ones who say things like, Number 4, obedience is the highest virtue.
Where is that written?
Oddly, it's written in Paradise Lost. As Adam says, henceforth I learned that to obey is best, and love with fear the only God. It's not written in the Bible, not even in my extended edition director's cut of the Bible. Though even going by the King James Version, love is still the highest virtue. And now abideth faith, hope, charity, these 3. But the greatest of these is charity. To Milton's credit, he does put love in the top 5. Add virtue, patience, temperance, add love, by name to come called charity, the soul of all the rest. Of course, you cannot love someone without respecting their boundaries. I'm not an anarchist, but I hate that Milton gets the order wrong. For to obey for love's sake is beautiful, while to love for the sake of obedience is, as Galadriel puts it, Number 3, of man's taint. I know what I said. This poem inspires me to kick Milton's taint. For Milton, to put it nicely,
You're a sexist, egotistical, lying, hypocritical bigot.
for Adam always knows best. And according to Milton, if it were up to Adam, humanity would have never fallen. Except that Adam has one flaw, his willingness to submit to Eve. For that reason, Adam let Eve leave his side, giving the opportunity for the serpent to strike.
Don't you love her as she's walking out the door?
Thus, Adam's only fault is his inability to live without Eve. Between Eve eating the fruit and Adam taking a bite, Milton gives Adam this soliloquy. Certain my resolution is to die, for how can I live without thee? How forego thy sweet converse and love so dearly joined, to live again in these wild woods forlorn, and me with thee hath ruined.
With their flaxen hair and tantalizing elbows, they're the very embodiment of sin.
Yet, even fallen, Milton's Adam remains superior to Eve. He is the one who still converses with angels. All this is, of course, a rather loose interpretation of Genesis. Technically, Genesis says that her husband was with her while Eve was tempted in the garden. But humanity has been debating about what that means for a few thousand years. I'll accept that Milton is telling the story true to his tradition, though it annoys me, but I cannot accept Milton's next assertion in any fashion. Number 2, the source of Eve's salvation. According to Milton, Eve is never meant to know God directly, even in paradise. Rather, she must rely on Adam. To Adam, thus Eve, with perfect beauty adorned, my author and disposer, what thou biddest, unguarded I obey. So God ordains, God is thy law, thou mine. To know no more is woman's happiest knowledge and her praise. Milton goes so far as to command Eve to not think of heavenly things. Thy fair Eve, heaven is for thee too high to know what passes there. Be lowly wise. Here is another reason why this poem should not be lumped in with the Divine Comedy. For starters, their heavenly geography is completely different. Though I find it cute that Milton attributes the elliptical nature of orbits to the fall of man. More importantly, Dante could only be saved due to the intervention of 3 women, Mary the Mother of God, St. Lucy, and Beatrice. The latter personally showed him around the heavens in their courses and revealed to him the very face of God. I'm not going to say that the High Middle Ages were a golden age for the respect of the dignity of women, just that Dante had a better handle on chivalry than Milton. Thus, ne'er the two poems should be mixed, since Milton, Dante, and I would all loathe it.
Loathing, unadulterated loathing.
Number 1. The Paradise of Fools. Of all the offenses Milton has paid me in his little poem, the first is by far the worst. For barely had we gotten out of hell and the horrors therein, the most horrific, of course, being feminine sin, does Milton take a pause to say where he thinks Catholics will spend our eternity. Into the devious air then might ye see cowls, hoods, and habits with their wearers tossed and fluttered into rags, then reliquies, beads, indulgences, dispenses, pardons, bulls, the sport of winds, all these upworld aloft, fly o'er the backside of the world far off, into a limbo large and broad, since called the Paradise of Fools.
I know when I've been insulted. I know when I've been insulted.
Now, I really don't mind it when artists take shots at the flaws in the Catholic Church's hierarchy. Both Dante and Tolkien lit bad popes or their stand-ins on fire.
Surpasses Denethor, son of Ecthelion.
So I don't discriminate against non-Catholics who provide insightful criticism into my church. But Milton takes it too far. To Milton, I say, Jesus feasted with fools. And I dance with wolves. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe if you would like to see more. Your patronage is greatly appreciated.